Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Happy Friday. We made it. It's been a busy week. Last night, I was out at the Al Smith dinner. Doug and I decided to go this year watching Donald Trump roast Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and more. We'll get into that experience and much, much more with my first guest today. And later, the first of our GOP Senate candidates will join us. Bernie Moreno of Ohio is in a very tight race. This is the one Senate race that they are calling a toss-up. He is trying to unseat the Democrat incumbent, Sherrod Brown, and he could do it. It's like all the polls have the other guy up 4, up 4, up 3, up 2, up 2, up 1, up 1, up 1. So he's been behind in all of these polls, and he's behind in the average of polls, but it's tightening just at the right time. So what does that mean for him? We'll get into it. But first, joining me now in the studio, Maureen Callahan. She's columnist for the Daily Mail and author of Ask Not, the Kennedys and the Women They Destroyed. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Okay, there's a lot at stake in this upcoming election, as you know. But regardless of who is sitting in the White House, the fuse on this volatile economy has already been lit. Even 4 years of a conservative presidency might not be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, it's like throwing gas on a dumpster fire. But one thing you could consider is to protect your savings by diversifying into gold with the help of Birch Gold Group. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife. And it can protect you right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an IRA or a 401k into an IRA in physical gold, tax-free and penalty-free. And it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying power of the US dollar has declined and the price of gold has increased 40%. Text MK to 989898 to learn more. They'll send you a free info kit on gold and you can check it out for yourself. Consider Birch Gold to protect your savings with its A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold. Maureen, great to have you here.
It's great to be back, Megyn. Thanks for having me.
All right. So have you ever been to this Al Smith dinner?
Never.
Well, I've been a couple times. I used to go with Fox and I'm a Catholic and I love Cardinal Dolan. So it's kind of fun to go because what traditionally happens is the two presidential candidates come and they make fun of themselves and each other.
Right.
And it's very good natured. I think I told the audience, the one I remember is from, I think, 2008, where Barack Obama got up there and he was like, oh, my name Barack comes from my mom. My middle name Hussein comes from someone who thought I'd never be running for president, which is funny, right?
Very funny.
He mocks himself. Then you do some good-natured ribbing of the opponent. Everybody sits down. And the whole setting is bipartisan. Like last night, I have to say, it was kind of bizarre. You're sitting there. They have this never-ending dais. I mean, everybody's up on the dais. It's like more people on the dais than were on the floor. And you had Letitia James, the Attorney General of the state of New York, and Trump, the man whose fortune she's currently trying to steal. And she's going to get overruled because that appellate court was crapping all over her successful verdict. So they're up there together. Mayor de Blasio's up there. Mayor Bloomberg is up there. Mayor Adams is up there.
Amazing.
Who's been indicted when Trump gives him a little jazz, nicely saying, good luck with everything.
Yeah.
Good luck with everything.
Exactly.
I think you're going to win. And you got Trump. You normally would have Kamala Harris, but she bailed. She refused to come, and she was the first candidate since Walter Mondale, right? Since we were like 10. I don't know how old you were, what year that was.
No, I'm around your age. Yeah. Absolutely.
And to not show up. And Trump made a joke out of that, saying, you saw how that ended for Mondale.
Right.
Complete wipeout.
Right.
He only won one state of the 50. It was a mistake. It would have been a chance to do some outreach to Catholics. It's not just about New York. She's going to win New York City. She's going to win New York State. It's what message are you sending to Catholics in America? This is a very big, important gathering for them. They raised some $10 million for Catholic charities, which help little kids. Why wouldn't you go? And what she said was, reportedly, she was busy. She was on just such bullshit. Trump is busy too.
Really?
Either you prioritize it or you don't. So she didn't get the chance to get up there, but she sent in a video.
Are we going to watch the video?
We're going to watch part of the video. It was, we'll start with her because Trump is pure comedy gold. Mm-hmm. But look at literally nobody laughed. We were just confused. She did this bit from, I don't know, afar and incorporated Mary Catherine Gallagher, Molly Shannon's character from SNL.
So culturally relevant.
I know, right?
Really, like, come up to date a little bit.
Truly, like the kids were probably like, who is that?
Throw your back into this if you're going to do it remotely. I mean, this is what really struck me and I think goes to the core of her essential problem. She cannot laugh at herself. She does not have a sense of humor, which is a sign of intelligence. And people love nothing more than others who can poke fun at themselves, I think. And we saw Trump do it. You know, Eric Adams, like his entire administration is under indictment. Every day another person is resigning in disgrace. He showed up.
Right.
That could not have been easy for him.
Right. You know, my husband was saying too, Trump had a moment up there which was actually kind of endearing. I'm getting ahead of myself, but he said, you know, do you think it's not easy to come up here and speak to a room like this where half the people hate your guts and the other half loves you? And then, of course, he adjusted his numbers. Now, 70% love you, you know. But he's like, you think it's easy to get up here and do this? He was exactly right. Like, this is New York City. It went 87% for Joe Biden. These were not his fans, but he came and he stood in front of us and he did his bit in a good-humored way. He made fun of Kamala, of course, and Joe Biden and Tim Walz and all of them, and himself, and took it like a man, right? So she instead bombs in via videotape with all the Klieg lights and the eye lights on her. You know, her lighting was she was aglow, Maureen.
Right.
And she has Molly Shannon pop in and do the entire bit. It really wasn't Kamala Harris. She just kind of wrapped it. Here's a little bit of what we saw.
Hey, what's going on? Who was that?
Oh, sorry, Mary Catherine Kelly. Mary Catherine Kelly. Sometimes when I get nervous, I stick my fingers under my arms and I simmer them like that. But that's gross.
So tell me something. I'm giving a speech. Do you have some thoughts about what I might say tonight?
My feelings about what you should say tonight would be best expressed in a monologue from one of my favorite made-for-TV series.
Okay, let's hear it.
Don't you see, man? We need a woman to represent us. A woman brings more heart, more compassion. And think how smart she must be to become a top contender in a field dominated by men. It's time for a woman, bro. And with this woman, we can fly.
Thank you, Mary Catherine.
Thank you, Mamala.
Thank you. Your Eminence and distinguished guests, the Al Smith dinner provides a rare opportunity to set aside partisanship and come together to do some good by supporting the tremendous charitable work of the Catholic Church.
Why didn't you?
Really?
Where were you?
I also love her wiki thumbnail of what the Al Smith dinner is. I mean, is that not her in a nutshell?
Right.
Let's go back to whatever, and I can just eat up some time.
Right.
You know, I was raised Catholic. I no longer really consider myself a Catholic, but I think she is making a huge mistake. I think there's no way to read that other than dismissal and disdain. And to watch Jim Gaffigan, like to have that thing land with a thud, like the room, what I watched was silent.
Yes.
And then he gets up and he makes fun of her, and he's a pretty middle of the road.
He's not a Trump fan. I think he's publicly criticized Trump in the past. Pretty sure. Yeah.
It seemed like he had no use for her.
No, exactly. I was surprised last night because I thought he's 100% on Team Harris. And then when I heard him last night, I'm like, oh, wait, what? No, it didn't go over well at all. And I went back and watched it again this morning because my experience of it in the room was, of course, she's so repellent. She's not warm. She just totally missed the moment. The moment is about being funny, making fun of yourself, and then, yes, others too. And singe, don't burn is generally the rule at all these things. She did not make fun of herself at all. She got up there, and the little bit that we cut out of that was almost the entire thing. We just played the audience. It didn't go on for much longer than that. I wrote down the other things that were in there. She said, do you have any advice for me, Mary Catherine? And the Molly Shannon character says, don't bear false witness against your neighbor. And Kamala Harris responds with, especially when it comes to election results. Oh, okay, but okay. And then the second one was, my other piece of advice is maybe don't criticize Catholics. And Kamala says, oh, I would never do that. that would be like criticizing Detroit in Detroit. That's it. That's as much as we got out of her. And nothing about herself. Didn't take a shot at like her weird laugh, her cackle, the coup. You know, she should have gotten some SNL writers in there. She had somebody from SNL to write something funny about herself that would have made her seem warm.
100%. And there's no lack of material there. There's no dearth of stuff to poke fun at. Are you kidding? That little bit too of, first of all, don't offend Catholics. Like, we can take it.
Yeah.
You know, like WAPO, their coverage of last night was that Trump was profane and below the belt.
Right.
And all I could think was, excuse me, nobody does that better than Catholics, especially Irish Catholics.
Yes,
we are so
bread and butter.
fluent in that. Are you kidding? That's great.
It's true.
So to then not bear false witness. Well, how about these women that are causing some trouble vis-a-vis your husband?
Yeah. What about them?
How about that, as Mary Catherine Gallagher is saying, woman, vote for... Well, how about these other women?
Yeah.
And when I was reading a bit before joining you, I had not realized this, but in 2022, Biden signed an act called the Speak Now Act. And what that does is free any woman who has had to sign an NDA regarding a sex assault or harassment settlement to speak freely without any fear of retribution.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Nanny.
Right?
Let's hear from the nanny.
And the ex-girlfriend.
The ex-girlfriend's not speaking. She's not under an NDA, at least not as your paper, the Daily Mail has reported. I think she just doesn't want to come out because her life will be ruined.
I think so too. And I think my hope is that as difficult as it may be for her, that she can maybe see the bigger picture, because this story is so completely underreported still.
It's infuriating.
And I cannot believe it.
It's infuriating. Honestly, well, let's table that. We'll do SNL first, or not SNL, but Al Smith, and then we'll do Doug Emhoff, because we've saved this for you, because there's so much to go over, the dereliction that we've been seeing. So she missed the moment. She didn't get it. She offered no jokes at her own expense, and she made absolutely zero inroads. I believe she did not go because the Catholic Church, you might know at home, is anti-abortion. They're not big on abortion. That's fine. She is. That's her number one issue. And they are not pro this trans mania. They do not believe that you can be born in the wrong body or change your sex. And I think she was worried about offending people on her side who believe in those things, as though those people aren't aware that that's how we Catholics view the world, and would see her visit to a dinner that every Democrat for 50 years has attended as somehow breaking new ground against them.
It's really incredible. I mean, if she's that fearful of her own base, what is she doing? You know, when it's akin to what she was saying to Bret Baier the other evening when he was pressing her, and she was saying, well, I will follow the law. I don't think she understands the job description of President of the United States. And how, you know, Barack Obama had a lot of threads, he was trying to work through a needle when he was first running in 2008. He did not shy away from any of this stuff. And we know that David Plouffe, one of his top guys, is now one of Kamala's top people. And I really think she is this. I mean, we know she's difficult to work for. Like 90% of her staff has fled in tears. No one can get through to her. I think, you know, you often make the Meghan Markle comparison, and I think that's right, because I don't think she's smart enough to know what she doesn't know. I don't think she has the humility to listen to constructive criticism. If any one of us had half those flaming disasters of interviews, I mean, I'd be holding crisis meetings.
Yeah.
And asking people, how do I up my game? Tell me what to do. I will listen.
And the chance, like on the heels of that disastrous Bret Baier interview, to come out and show that you still have a sense of humor, you're still willing to put yourself in front of a crowd that may not be all in your favor.
Yeah.
Even raise something about it, you know, like something that you did, something silly, something about you that's bad that's in the news, and people will love you for it.
They really would. The smartest thing she could do is to go on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, but she won't. She doesn't have that gear. And I hadn't linked it to her lack of intelligence, but you're 100% right. There's no evidence that Kamala Harris is an intelligent person. There really isn't.
None.
I've been very open-minded to it. I mean, I can see somebody clearly and say, I don't like this person, but I can tell that it's a smart person. She's not there. That's not her. So you're right. That's why she's unable to make fun of herself other than she can laugh at other people's jokes. She can just cackle her way through what she recognizes is supposed to be a funny situation. So contrast that with Trump, who gets up there. It actually was kind of funny. He was a little obsessed with the fact that there was a teleprompter, but they told him he couldn't use it.
Why?
I don't know. I guess he really didn't want to have to read his speech old school.
Oh.
But I think they did him a favor because they let Jim Gaffigan use the teleprompter. He was the MC. And it seemed to fail on him more than once. And you could see him kind of like deftly, but stutter his way through a couple of bits as it stalled and then tried to recover. So I'm wondering if just it was either tradition or whether they knew the prompter wasn't that steady and they wanted to spare Trump from having to deal with that. I don't know what the answer is. Anyway, it was funny to me and Doug that like he kept going back to it. He said, "Now they told me I couldn't use the teleprompter. Now I get here. There's a beautiful teleprompter. It's
the best teleprompter.
I guess only you can use it."
Yeah.
So he gets up there and hits everybody. I mean, it was like machine gun fire. He just hit everybody in the room, but in a very funny way. And himself talked about like the indictments, all of that. Did not mention Tish James, I think. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember whether he did that. But here's a sampling of how it went for him.
It's a true pleasure to be with you this evening. Amazing pleasure. And these days it's really a pleasure anywhere in New York without a subpoena for my appearance. But if you really wanted Vice President Harris to accept your invitation, I guess you should have told her the funds were going to bail out the looters and rioters in Minneapolis, and she would have been here, guaranteed she would have been here. Guaranteed. There's a group called White Dudes for Harris. Have you seen this? But I'm not worried about them at all because their wives and their wives' lovers are all voting for me.
That's great.
Campaigning can take a toll on a family and family life, although I hear that Kamala and her husband carve out some really beautiful alone time at the end of the day for an intimate dinner, just Doug, her, and a teleprompter that she uses quite well. Tradition holds that I'm supposed to tell a few self-deprecating jokes this evening. So here it goes. Nope, I've got nothing. I guess I just don't see the point of taking shots at myself when other people have been shooting at me for a hell of a long time and they shoot at. But unfortunately, Governor Walz isn't here himself, but don't worry, he'll say that he was. He's going to say he was.
That's my favorite.
That's great.
I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz. The stupid show, The View, is so bad now that the other day I was watching it and thinking to myself, you know what? They really need to bring Rosie O'Donnell back.
Oh, God. Oh, that's desperate.
That's great.
Isn't
That's
that good?
so funny.
And even the joke about like you're supposed to say something self-deprecating. So here goes, I got nothing. Is him being self-deprecating? Like he's making fun of himself.
Self-awareness,
Yeah.
right? Because I am notoriously depicted as very thin-skinned.
Right. And I'm a braggart. So
And
why
I'm a
would I do
braggart.
such a thing?
And it's amazing to watch Michael Bloomberg, former mayor, sit there with a stone face.
Yes.
Just completely will not be charmed by this whatsoever.
Right.
No matter what you think of Trump, he was charming in that little bit he did. And that goes a long way. Relatedly, so I was at my doctor yesterday, and these are people I have known for like 15 years. I'm wearing a red baseball cap. One of the doctors says, I saw you from behind, and I thought, oh my God, is she wearing a MAGA cap? Oh. And I was thinking to myself, well, what if I was?
So what?
Right?
Right.
Do you think differently of me now? Like, I'm not wearing a MAGA cap, but that doesn't mean you know what's going on inside of my head.
It makes you want to wear one.
It kind of makes you want to just be like, and it was a moment where I thought, there are so many people in this race as it comes to its inevitable, thankful close, who are considering Donald Trump in ways they thought they never would. And I think there is going to be such a silent turnout for him. I really think he's going to win.
Do you?
I do. Do you?
I'm getting worried.
Tell me why.
Because I've reached out to a lot of people who I know and said, how's it looking? How's it looking? How's it looking? And they just keep giving me back the same feedback, 50-50, 50-50, 50-50, So I think that's real. I think that you'd rather be Trump. They also say I'd rather be Trump than Kamala. Like the momentum seems to be with Trump, and he's closing strong, and he has a tendency to do that. And he doesn't have the baggage around him this time around COVID and lockdowns and all that he did going into the last one. But it's tight, Maureen. It's very, very tight. And I think it could very well be a real nail biter on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
No, agreed. I wonder if we'll even know that night,
I know.
I really do. And it's so, for people like us who live for this stuff and marinate in the news, it's really exhilarating. And then just as a person and someone who loves this country, it's frightening and terrifying.
It's such a fork, It's not like, I don't know, even like Romney, Obama. There were big differences, policy speaking, but it didn't feel, I don't want to say existential. I don't think this is existential for the country. I know many people do. It didn't feel this huge. The gulf, the delta between the two of them just did not feel quite this enormous.
Yeah.
I mean, we are about to go on one of two paths, and it's almost just diametrically opposed. Depending on how this goes. And not only that, the whole Senate, House, and White House could both go either way.
Right.
I know what the odds are, but I'm just saying it is potential that one party or the other could emerge with full control, which is just like terrifying in some ways.
100%.
So yeah, I actually woke up the past few nights at 3 a.m. I'm like, am I becoming one of those lunatics whose life gets overwhelmed with politics? I've never been that person. It's just, my team reminded me, they're like, no, it's that you're overwhelmed with the amount of news that we're trying to stuff into the show every day and don't get to. Now, I still have more to say, and there's crazy stories, and there's fact checks that we need to do. There's just too much shit being thrown at us, and I feel like we've got to keep it straight.
Right.
The other side has upped its level of lies, and we have to respond accordingly.
Yes. And it's also, I think, everybody's running on this level of cortisol and adrenaline. And it's just, I feel the same way. I mean, I have nights where it's difficult to sleep. And I'm not even sure what it is that's keeping me awake. But it's this constant bombardment, and it's this constant feeling that this election does feel different, even though every election since Obama has been the most consequential ever. I find it fascinating, by the way, that our favorite multimillionaires, the Obamas, who are all about democracy and the future of this country, have been very quiet when it comes to Kamala. Like, they're coming out of the woodwork next week, right? They're checking their box, they're doing their duty, whatever. But these two do not want her in office, and that says everything to me. Whether you agree with Obama or not, he's one of the smartest political minds of the past 50 years.
He is.
He knows what he's doing.
And he didn't think she could do it. He was the last of the big names to endorse her. And he kind of got dragged into it because she had secured the whole thing, notwithstanding his reservations. And then what choice did he have? But he's smart enough to know she's not a smart person, and she should not be having the job that he does know very well.
100%. And I really, when he said that thing to that audience of Black men about his theory that they don't want to pull the trigger for Kamala because she's a woman. I mean, says the man married to the most popular figure in the Democratic Party, Michelle freaking Obama.
Maybe in the nation.
Yeah.
This is not a sexist country that can't stand the idea of a woman. That party begged Michelle Obama to run. Begged. But he looks right back at them and says, it's your sexism at play.
It's your fault. It's your shortcomings. You're too small-minded. Who doesn't love to be told how small-minded they are by a guy who's jetting back to his estate in Hawaii that he's building?
No, all of them. And then Michelle Obama, how much money does she get per speech? Look at all of her estates. And then she's out on as you know, at the DNC talking about how we're suspicious of people who earn too much money.
Ooh.
It's just that they're everywhere saying that kind of messaging to us. And I think like Bruce Springsteen was out endorsing Kamala Harris. It's like, you have more money than God. Like, just stop. Okay, John Bon Jovi was out endorsing Kamala Harris. It's like, you used to be a Jersey boy who understood how these voters are living. Those days are long past. I've been behind the stage at a John Bon Jovi concert, seeing him firsthand. And I was with Kid Rock, who was drinking his whiskey like a normal rocker should. And there was John Bon Jovi literally with his white wine with his pinky out. I'm like,
really?
Of course he endorsed Kamala Harris.
Wow.
It's just, you see this parade of multi-millionaires, and then today Taylor Swift dropped a video on Insta where she just walks, you see her from behind walking into a stadium, and then she turns to the camera and she's holding her little kitty. Here it is. Her little kitty, just reminding us she's a childless cat lady, Maureen. Here it is.
SEXYYRED. Play with me, I put a pothole in your teeth. I'm with my peoples and we coming 50 deep. You ain't know I was a hitter cause I'm always looking fleet. Cash out, new bar, AMG, outside, bubble gum with some bloody red seat.
Like Taylor Swift can relate at all to the problems of the working class or the middle class who are really considering Trump, even if they don't much like the man.
I'm going to guess that's a $15,000 cat. I'm not kidding. She is so awkward anyway. She's so profoundly awkward. You know who matters? Beyonce. Where's Beyonce for Kamala?
It's true. She let her use the song, but she hasn't really been out there for her. She was for Hillary. It is kind of interesting.
I think it's very interesting.
Well, the other thing is Taylor Swift, parading out. How old is Taylor Swift now? 34?
34.
Parading out, with your swagger, childless cat lady. I'm not sure it has the message that you think it does because your love life and your travails are in the news every other week.
Yeah.
We understand you sing all the time about being rejected and cheated on and discarded. Okay, it's a little more complicated than you're leading us to believe.
Yes, it really is. I mean, I thought it was, when she came out after that debate on Instagram and disabled her comments, but threw her weight behind Kamala, I thought that was a really strange choice. I just thought, why? I guess she's so wealthy, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But why would you alienate half of your fan base?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? It makes no sense.
She doesn't care. I mean, I think she lost a few million subscribers on Spotify. I can't remember what the number was, but looking at it, was she had 200 million subscribers and she went down to 200 million minus 5. It was I don't know. She lost a few million. I was well, in this huge, that's like Kim Kardashian losing 1 million followers on Instagram. She wouldn't even feel it. So she doesn't care. And that's fine. I think the consumers should just be aware of that when they give their daughters over to this woman. And remember to counter-program your daughter, that Taylor Swift may sing some songs your daughter likes, but that does not make her any sort of moral arbiter in how they should live their life or choose their partners, approach relationships, anything. It's true for all these rock stars, never mind just her.
Anything, exactly. The Bruce Springsteen example, too, is so salient because he said, I don't know if you ever saw his thing on Broadway. Well, then I saw it on HBO. I didn't pay money to see it, but everybody was raving about it. It was the most amazing one-man show ever, ever, ever. And he gets up there and he starts talking about how he was just a boy with a guitar and a dream. And we all got the memo a long time ago. But he says, the thing about me is I am a fraud. I sing about what it's like to be working class, and I really have never been.
Never?
Well,
just assumed there were some years there in the childhood.
Maybe the childhood, but he was such a success from such an early age and was sort of anointed the future of rock and roll at such a young age that he has lived in a bubble for the bulk of his adult life. And he doesn't really know what it's like to be working class, and he doesn't know what it's like to struggle. As great as his music is, it's just not the same. And I don't think Taylor Swift, as she embarks on the 8 millionth leg of this never-ending Eras tour, has time to immerse herself in the issues.
Yeah.
I don't.
Exactly. She's got one issue, which is abortion, and that's what she's in favor of. Similarly, today, Ian Sams, who works for the Kamala Harris campaign, was tweeting out that Kamala's appearance with Bret Baier earned over 7 million viewers, whereas Trump's town hall in the middle of the day with Harris Faulkner, by the way, when people are at work, but that's fine, earned only about 3 million. And we were laughing, thinking, this is not good news for you, sir. You should not have wanted more people to see that interview. Like, it's not good for you, the 7 million saw her there. That it didn't go well.
100%. I think a lot of that is people rubbernecking. Like, they can't believe it. Like, that's the thing that if I were her, I would mock at the Al Smith dinner. Yeah. I would want to mock that. I would want to have people telling me to hard rap.
Yeah.
You know? And like, watching her.
That's good.
Continue to go in on Bret Baier. Like, I really think she thought she was like on fire. I think she thought she was winning this. And meanwhile, her whole team is like, he's like, ma'am, like, your people are telling me to hard rap.
Begging me.
It's not even going in yet, you know? And it's sort of like that, I think it's one of the most insane interviews I've ever seen.
You know something? I was watching it with my family, and all 3 of my kids, who are not political beings, but they're just kind of taking it all in as kids, all 3 of them were like, just answer the question. Why doesn't she answer the question? Even kids got it, that she was dodging. And she left everybody with the same impression. She can't answer it, or she won't answer it. Neither one is good. And so it is not something to be celebrated that she got 7 million viewers on that. And by the way, the reason Trump's town hall with Harris Faulkner did not rate bigger is A, it was in the middle of the day, but B, because he does it all the time. He's everywhere, which is good. That's what he should be doing.
Yes.
At this point, it's not about doing like 4 events in which you get huge ratings, which absolutely Trump can do. He's got, unlike Kamala Harris, a lifetime of huge ratings, had the #1 show on television for 10 years.
Yeah.
Revitalized cable news for the last 10 that we've just been living through, not to mention broadcast. So please spare me, right? If Trump wanted to just strategically drive the numbers up very easily, what he's doing right now is trying to blanket the field.
Right.
He's said yes to virtually every podcaster out there because he's just about getting himself exposure,
right,
as opposed to just driving somebody's numbers up on one hit.
And he's so smart to do podcasts where you have longer, more free-ranging discussions, which really does show a nimbleness of mind. Like, and he'll just talk about anything, you know, whereas she needs these parameters. And I think it was Jim Gaffigan at the event last night, you tell me, who said something like, well, she can make time for Call Her Daddy.
Yeah.
But she can't make time for us. And that's all you really need to say.
For the Catholics. I mean, really, that's who she rejected in favor of the sex podcast. You know, the problem that Trump is having in this race, if he's having one, and I mean, he is in that he's not running away with it. So why is that? It's, of course, the gender gap. And I mean, there are definitely hangover effects of January 6th and all that too, even with men. But the biggest problem is women don't like Trump. And I know there are lots of female Trump voters listening to this right now saying, I do. I'm saying countrywide, far more women dislike Trump than like him. And I just don't know, like, how do you get through to those women? You know, because I want them to listen to us talk. Like, you do not seem like a far right or even necessarily a right. I've never asked you what your politics are. I don't care.
I'm pretty middle of the road.
Yeah.
You know?
And I, of course, had a very complicated history with Trump. All I can tell you for sure is that, you know, within the last 8 years, I really did not much like Trump at all. But then I watched him govern. And I looked at the alternative and I looked at the country. And at some point, this becomes a binary choice. And that's kind of how I felt in 2020. And I did vote for Trump in 2020, even though it was a much more difficult decision for me then. You know, I was still like, I don't know if this is a good person, but I like the policies. And now I'm at the point where I just see Trump very differently. I don't think Trump is a bad person. I think he's controversial for sure. And he says incendiary things. He's not the most sensitive character, but I don't really give an F. I feel like I don't want the most sensitive character. I would elect one of those effete Democrats if I wanted that.
Right.
I want a tough man. When he stood up after getting shot, that's like just a before and after moment. I want someone who's not afraid of China or Russia or Chuck Schumer. That was one of the best moments last night. He almost like just must Chuck Schumer's hair. Like he's like, he did it.
Yeah.
They want us to believe Nancy Pelosi got rid of Biden. It was him. He did it. This guy right here.
So funny.
He's not afraid of any of these people. Like even just sit on the same stage with Tish James.
Yeah.
How could he do it? That takes real balls. Anyway, I hope these women can see it's about more than his language, whether he's rough around the edges. You know, and it's the way we ended our show yesterday where he spoke to that Bloomberg journalist, Maureen, and the guy was like, oh, is it proper to call him Gavin a new scum? Any one of the CEOs in this room would get fired for using language like that. And Trump was like, I don't care. They don't get attacked like I do. They don't have to fight the way I do.
Right.
He's so right. There's never been somebody more attacked than Trump. And so this is how he's chosen to get through it.
Right.
You know, to be bare-knuckled and not unforgiving, because he will forgive you. If you're warm to him, he'll be warm to you. But if you're not, he'll keep it going forever. And to be sometimes petty. But it's that same streak that makes him stand up for Brett Kavanaugh, that makes him not fold when he gets indicted 4 times, when they literally try to steal his entire corporate fortune, when they accuse him of rape in a 30-year-old trumped-up charge. All of that has to come in this package. I really hope women consider that in deciding whether he's too much.
So to your disclosure about who you voted for in 2020, I voted for Biden. And I knew he was not fully compos mentis. I knew he was installed there by the party, but I felt a real kind of fatigue, I think, with COVID, with lockdown. Trump's administration had felt extremely erratic, people coming and going, and it just seemed like that was a check for normalcy. And I felt relieved when I did it, even though Joe Biden would never have been my first choice. Now, I am also someone who has been yelled at personally by Donald Trump. I had nothing like what you had, but I know what it's like. And I have to tell you, Megyn, it was a high watermark of my career to be yelled at by this guy. And he kept going to the point where I said, sir, I think I have to let you go. Like, you must have more important things to do than yell at the likes of me. But I think what's happening is you have to really, I look at, you know, there's sort of this argument like, well, you're kind of at this point voting for a person, and then there's this whole apparatus that really runs the country. But when I think about the last person in the room or the 3 a.m. call argument, all I can think about is Joe Biden in the Situation Room being told by his top military advisors, his top war strategists, don't exit Afghanistan like this. Don't. Please don't. And he said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to. So it matters. It matters. And every time Kamala Harris opens her mouth, she is not for us. She's not for anybody but herself. She's really not. And I truly believe, yes, you should always be suspicious of anybody who wants this amount of power. But we do know how Trump governed in the first term. This country did really well under him. Really well. And you kind of know what you're going to get. You do know.
I actually think that Trump's, his ego, his enormous ego, and the fact that like everything is a reflection of him that's close to him, the Trump brand, Trump Tower, his Trump company, you know, Melania, all of it. Like, I think that's how he sees. It's not a bad thing to have him feeling that way about the country. Like, the country does well, I do well. It looks good for me. That actually, we can use that to our advantage. That's how I thought it played out the first time around. He took personal pride in the U.S. successes, and he took any losses personally too, and like wouldn't allow it and would stay on it like a dog with a bone, the way he would a reporter who he thought had crossed him, the way he would do a political enemy who he thought wouldn't stop opposing him. I just think it's actually a net positive. All the tumult that comes with him personally, I think net, it's a positive for us as a country. And you look at the other side, it's like, I do think that Brett Baer questioned Kamala Harris about, what did you know about the mental acuity?
How amazing was it that someone finally asked that question?
Yes. We've given her a total pass. And just today, Maureen, he's overseas. I think he's in Berlin, President Biden. Look, this is circulating on Twitter right now. Just take a look at the current state of our sitting president. Okay, look at this. I don't know if you've seen this video. Watch this. I'll describe it for lazy moments. He is walking in like he is 200. Coming at the floor, trying to figure out where to stand. Oh, and then he stops and thinks he's nailed it like a 2-year-old with a big smile. Anybody who's ever spent time with a 2-year-old relates to what he just did there. Unsteadily walks out, and you had that feeling as the adult, like, oh, is he going to make it? Then when you can see he nails his spot, he looks up and gives a big smile, just like you've told your little junior to do for his school picture or his school play.
I know.
She covered that up and refuses to take responsibility for any of it.
I could not believe he asked that question. I was like, finally. Because when I was watching the debate, I was like, are we just pretending that this is not a thing that's happened? That she's not been with him every week, as she has said, or last one in the room when a big decision is being made and she knows nothing? I mean, the Biden that we just saw and that we have been seeing is terrifying. It's disheartening. It makes me extremely angry because this is what the power structure is about, just holding on to power however long you can. Biden, I think, is marshaling every last resource he has to shiv Kamala. That's what he's got the energy for.
It looks.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing the Kamala hands.
The Kamala hands.
I've started making the Kamala.
I decided that's one thing I like about Kamala Harris.
Really?
Well, she has pretty hands.
Well, she does, and they're very well manicured.
Yeah.
And she has like a very expensive like gemstone. I'm sure Dougie gave it to her.
I'm sure he did.
Seems like a piece of apology jewelry to me.
I was just going to say, maybe after a fight.
After a little indiscretion, maybe, But I think that, watching that video, I've never seen Joe Biden as animated in recent mememory as he was talking shit to Barack Obama.
Yes, the lip readers say it was about her.
Yeah.
She's not strong.
Not like me.
Yeah.
Not like Methuselah.
Yeah. He knows. Okay. By the way, here's the lip reading thing. Okay. I don't have the translation in front of me, but was it the New York Post or the Daily Mail? Somebody hired a lip reader to try to figure out what they were saying. And he was saying, she's not as strong as I am. And it was the Daily Mail. I don't have it in front of me anyway. You can.
It was
Google
something like that. And Barack Obama, I think, was saying like, yeah, I know, or I agree. This is at Ethel's funeral, right?
Yes,
Kennedy,
where then Bill Clinton got up there and said like the weirdest stuff about how they always flirted together. Like, what do you...
And how he
what are you
was
doing?
like, the replacement rates are down. We need more women like you to just shoot them out.
Okay. Wait, my team sent me the transcript. Here it is. Early in the conversation, Biden says to Obama, she's not as strong as me. Obama solemnly replies, I know, that's true. We have time. Obama then says to Biden, no, that's not on, presumably looking at a mic, to which Biden simply responds, Obama adds, I think it's important that we can have some time together. We'll take it at face value. Biden then appears to back his predecessor up, saying, yeah, we'll get there in time. Obama then turns his back to the camera and says something to Biden, to which Biden responds, uh-huh. So the relevant part is, she's not as strong as me. I know, that's true. We have time. Not much. So that's according to the Daily Mail's lip reader. We don't know whether that's in fact what happened. But I think you're right. He is trying to shiv her because it would be the greatest I told you so for Team Biden ever, right? Like, you should have stuck with the one that brung you.
100%. So we ran this image of Biden last week. I did a column that was sort of a wrap of Kamala's media blitzkrieg. And at the last minute, they swapped in this image of Biden wearing a MAGA hat, like a Trump hat.
Yeah.
Megyn, I thought it was superimposed. I thought it was a joke that we were pulling.
I thought that at first too.
And then I realized it was real. And I thought, oh, there's not a mean girl within 500 yards of Biden that can compete with his animosity. He is wanting to take her down. And I love it. I just love it because it's a real party at war. We know what they think.
Yeah.
We know what Biden thinks. We know what the Obamas think. Hillary is busy out promoting her book, Does she have time to give lip service? I don't think she does.
And then Bill Clinton goes out there and tries to say that if only they had vetted those illegals, then Laken Riley would still be alive. I mean,
Remarkable.
Is he that far gone that he doesn't know that guy is a problem for the Obama or for the Harris administration, not for earlier years? Like that guy was let out by the Harris-Biden administration.
Which makes me wonder, is Bill Clinton also trying to sabotage her?
I know. Like it's a good question. I just thought it was sort of age and him slipping, but maybe it's something more nefarious than that. All right, now I got to ask you, but you don't have to answer. All right, what are you thinking about this time around?
This election?
Yeah.
I am afraid to say what I think I might do. I've talked about this with you a lot, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this yesterday. There are people I am very close to who would consider themselves never Trumpers. I considered myself a never Trumper. But even just looking at the devastation wrought by these hurricanes, I have cousins who live down in Florida. I have a cousin who, she and her family have lost their house. They've lost everything. And she was saying, FEMA on the ground here is useless. Like, we have no help. These are people who have resources. They're not like the people in Batcave who are really the poorest of the poor. And I said to her, my parents, they lost their house in Hurricane Sandy. And FEMA was also useless. I cannot tell you, Megyn, how many times my brother would go to FEMA and say, where's our application? And they would say, we lost it. We invite you to reapply. That's the reality of FEMA. And that's the reality of this administration, which is just falling apart at the seams, whether it's that or the migrant crisis or the soft on crime policies that are destroying our greatest cities. And I think, it wasn't like that under Donald Trump. And the Middle East wasn't on fire under Donald Trump. And we didn't have an emboldened Putin under Trump. And Ukraine wasn't, all of this stuff. And so I'm really trying to think as rationally as possible. And it is possible. I thought for a while, never, especially after he gave that interview to Time magazine, really left a bad taste in my mouth. But looking what they've done to him, the lawfare, which every New Yorker, no matter how you feel about him, we all know bullshit when we see it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking I might. And I think I'm like a lot of people, women especially. Yeah. I really do. Abortion's not their biggest issue for the Dems and women.
I've told this story before, but in 2020, it was still kind of near my own personal bad period with Trump. And so I still wasn't much of a personal fan of his. But I had seen him govern for 4 years, and I liked his policies a lot. And he was chaotic. Like, I don't love thinking about my president quite that much, right? Like, I kind of want to think about myself more. And I know others felt that way. I've heard that people express that. But overall, I was very happy with the direction of the country. But it was still hard for me personally to actually vote for Trump because of everything. It almost felt like, am I betraying myself? Is this a lack of dignity on my part, right? Like, he did not treat me well. I know he was very angry at me and whatever, and I remember telling my group of friends who were they did not like Trump. They were all Democrats and they couldn't stand Trump. And then they were doubly mad about what had happened between yours truly and Trump. And we had dinner and I told them, I voted for Trump. And I actually choked up because it was just the end of an emotional saga for me where I just felt like, you know what? I've come full circle with this guy. He's been this weirdly large figure in my life for all sorts of strange reasons. But I see the good in him and I see what he can do for this country. And it isn't about me. It is not about me. It's about my values. Like, it's not about my personal ego or what happened to me. And my friends were pretty shocked. They were kind and loving, but couldn't believe it. And my dearest friend who had been campaigning for Joe Biden, I mean, she'd been out there canvassing for Joe and doing phone banks and so on, this time around is doing them for Trump.
No kidding.
Yes. This was one of my established leftist friends. And all of the Biden policies and the school shutdowns and the obsessive focus on race And she and her whole family now, who are all Democrats, have migrated over to, full on MAGA. And it's just, things can change just because you had this past with him, whether it's not as personal as mine or whatever, doesn't mean you can't take a fresh look at the guy and say, what is best for the country? Can I shrink my ego out of it?
Can I ask you, when you disclosed this very dark secret to your friends that you had voted for Trump, did you worry at all that they might look at you differently or treat you differently?
I thought they might look at me like I didn't have self-respect. Like, how could I vote for a man who would put my family? Because they lived it with me, firsthand. But they didn't. They were kind. They were loving. They've never judged me like that. So I shouldn't have been expecting that. I should have given them more of the benefit of the doubt. But even like then disclosing it publicly is a big step for a reporter.
100%.
Right? Or a journalist. I've never done that in the past. But I did feel like it was important because just given Trump's role in our country and our politics, people need to know where my biases are when it comes to him. We just talk about him so much. I just want people to know the honest truth about me and him so that they can factor everything I say about him through the right lens. And now I've really gone, I don't fully wear the MAGA hat yet, but I would, Maureen, I would wear that hat. And I'd be even more likely to wear it if somebody tried to shame me out of doing it. Anyway, we got to take a break, but I want to say to you, I hope you do it. I hope you put the hat on. I hope you fill the ballot out for Trump because I think it's what's right for us and the country. Love you. Stay by. Okay. Stand by. We're going to be right back. We're not done. We got to get Doug Emhoff. A whole hour's gone. We'll be right back. It's another intense election season, and it's easy to feel pulled in different directions with all the political noise. But with Donors Trust, you can stay in control of your charitable giving. You choose the organizations that reflect your values, whether it's conservative or libertarian or faith-driven, and Donors Trust will make sure your donations go exactly where you want. It's private, it's secure, and no matter who wins, your giving stays true to your principles. Plus, their service is top-notch. They make everything easy so you can focus on making an impact. With Donors Trust, it's your vision, your values, your impact. Learn more and consider opening a donor-advised fund today at donorstrust.org/MK. That's donorstrust.org/MK.
A major issue in this race is childcare, and Kamala has put forward a concept of a plan. A lot of people don't like it. The only piece of advice I would have for her in the event that she wins would be not to let her husband, Doug, anywhere near the nannies. Just keep them away.
So good.
And so true.
So good.
Frankly. Okay, so when last we spoke, the Doug Emhoff story, part 2, had hit the Daily Mail. Hit, being the operative word. It hit the Daily Mail, and he hit his ex-girlfriend, according to the Daily Mail. He's denied it. Since then, he's been on, by my count, at least 5 or 6 podcasts and shows, and literally 0 people have asked him about it. 0.
Do you happen to know, like, how many of those hosts may have been women? Were any of them women?
One, Molly Jung Fast.
Oh, that one. Oh,
who
please.
Thinks of herself, purports to be a feminist.
And a serious political commentator, neither of which she is.
Exactly right. And she asked him nothing, not one word about it, a total fail. And then he goes on a show called Uncomfortable Conversations with somebody named Emmanuel Acho. Uncomfortable Conversations. Hello, Emmanuel. It's your big moment. Do your thing. It's in your show name. And here is a little bit of how that went.
But tell me something about yourself that I can't find on Google.
Ooh, I've never had that question before. Well, Google doesn't show your character. Okay. I mean, Google can't really show, how I grew up and how my father and my mother raised me, and the fact that they're 87 and 83 and they're still around. They've been together almost 70 years, and the values that they imparted on me of loyalty, your family first, hard work, sticking up for others, not taking any crap, and, just being there for other people.
Sure, Dan.
Your go-to. I love it. I love it. I also love the dropping of the G's when it gets close to election day by the elite. We're just regular people talking to you morons out there, relating like we do.
It's so true. Like this is an opportunity for me to show you how relatable I am with my mom and my dad, and definitely not about me banging the nanny or slapping around my ex.
You know, those were the values they imparted to me.
Right.
My really great old parents, they really, you know, and it's a good thing Google can't tell your character, Doug.
Right.
It's a really great thing there's no x-ray for that yet.
It's got me now worried about the parents.
Yeah, seriously.
What exactly did they teach you?
What are your values? He and Kamala love to talk about their values. What are they?
So then he goes on with Dan Le Batard, who I guess is a sports analyst. And I don't, the audience know much about sports, and I know even less about the analysts who talk about it. But here's a little bit of how that went when he was asking Doug Emhoff about the switcheroo and the day that Kamala found out, totally passively.
Oh, right.
That she'd been elevated to the position of nominee. Watch.
You said that communication is key, but she couldn't communicate with you immediately to tell you that Joe Biden had stepped down, correct? You were busy in spin class, right?
That was right. So it was, I was in LA. It was during that weekend when all the planes were down because of the software glitch. So I had to spend an extra day in LA. I decided to go to a cycling class with some friends, and it was an hour class, and we were just chit-chatting. I had my phone in the Secret Service car, so I didn't have my phone. And then my friend's partner just showed me his phone with the letter from President Biden, and I'm like, gotta go, and just ran into the car, and there was my phone, literally, like, you could feel the steam, 7 or 8 messages, all with, you know, where are you? Call Kamala. And it was a 1 minute or less conversation, which started with, where the F were you? I need you right now. And basically get to work.
That's so weird. I've never spoken to Doug like that in our 18 years together, ever. Where the F were you? I don't care how big the news is. Like, what? Who talks to their spouse like that?
Maybe someone who's often wondering where their husband is talks like that.
That, now you're onto something.
Yeah, I think I am.
That's an interesting theory.
I think I am. Also, vis-a-vis this media blackout. So Bill Maher did his regular show last Friday. He waited until the overtime segment, which nobody watches because you have to tune into a whole other, who's got the time. That's when he brings up the Doug Emhoff story. Mm-hmm. That's when he says to his panel, don't you think this media blackout is disturbing? Well, I don't know, Bill. If you think it's that disturbing, why don't you do it on your actual show that people watch?
Let's elevate it to the actual airtime.
And any of these other broadcasters who I've never heard of before, you want to make a headline for yourself?
Yes.
Do it.
Right.
Ask the question.
Just ask it. Get him to deny it. The thing about the Bill Maher segment that was interesting was Laura Coates of CNN was on there.
She was infuriating.
So she's like, well, I don't know anything about that. I don't know much about that. I'm like, why not? It's a massive story. The Daily Mail is one of the most popular circulations in the world. Mm-hmm. You don't ever look at it. You don't follow politics. You have a whole show where you talk about politics. This one just escaped your notice somehow. Bullshit. You know all about it. You decided to reject it because it hurts your side. And then she follows up with, I do think it's really important to make sure of allegations before one reports them. You do? Tell that to Nick Sandmann, who your network smeared, suggesting he was antagonizing a Native American on the steps of the Supreme Court, making a smirky face at him while he just innocently danced on the steps. And the truth was exactly the opposite. Mm-hmm. Nick Sandmann was there minding his own business, being polite, and he was getting antagonized by that guy, which is why he sued them for defamation, and they were forced to settle. Tell it to the hands up, don't shoot morons who are on CNN. That's how that got started. Sonny Hostin and the others, hands up, don't shoot. They're holding their little signs. Did you investigate that one? Before you ran with those allegations, Jussie Smollett is not. Please, they always run with this shit before they verified it. They just don't like it when it hurts their side.
Number one, she got an entire pass on that show. She is an intellectual lightweight, and that is putting it politely because she's a black woman. So let's get real, okay? Yeah. Bill Maher loves nothing more than to go in on his women guests and like roll his eyes at them and call them stupid. He does it all the time.
But not in this case.
Not in this case. She was treated as though the profundities were just rolling off her tongue, and she sat there in her full, much in the way Sunny Hostin does. I am self-actualized, and everything I have to say is like, it's like manna from heaven, and the smugness and all of it, and it's just insufferable. And as to her completely flimsy point, well, we need to look into this and make sure these allegations have some weight behind them. First of all, that's called doing your job.
Yeah.
Okay, Laura Coates?
Go ahead and investigate.
Go ahead and investigate all you want. We at the Daily Mail found 3 witnesses, ear witnesses, a contemporaneous outcry, the documentation, her airline tickets. How do you think we got those?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Did it just fall out of the sky
to
into your
say
lap?
nothing of our legal team, which puts me through the paces all the time. And that's an opinion column.
I'm sure.
An opinion column. So don't treat our reporting like we're just, as Joe Scarborough said, these tabloid stories, Doug, about your personal life. Excuse me.
And the landing was something like, how do you deal with that? How do you center yourself, keep yourself centered, notwithstanding these attacks, which he doesn't specifically list out. So people in his audience don't know, if they haven't read it, that he's been accused of smacking a woman across the face, slapping her so hard she spun.
And the nanny, you were talking the other day about that LAPD call to her house that lines up with her timeline of pregnancy.
Yep.
And the nanny disclosing to people that she believed Doug's temper had caused her to lose that baby. This is a very, very, very serious allegation. Both of them are. And to just watch the media whistle past the graveyard and hope this goes away is disgusting.
Well, and how about Kamala Harris? She goes on that sex podcast, which you wrote a great column about, calling that host who decided to wear a sweatshirt to her interview with the vice president of the United States. You referred to her as a simpleton. This simpleton, of course, was not going to be able to ask any meaningful questions. But she goes on that sex podcast and starts railing about domestic violence and how we need to say something. You know, whether it happens on the street or behind closed doors, it's important that we say something. And it reminded me of that fake version of Kamala Harris who came out at the Brett Kavanaugh hearing. Like, I am woman, hear me roar. I will not take any shit from these male abusers. I'm going to protect the women of America. Oh, wait, unless it's my husband who is the alleged abuser. We pulled the sound. Let's watch some of it.
Judge Kavanaugh, have you taken a professionally administered polygraph test? All 3 of the women who have made sworn allegations against you have called for an independent FBI investigation into the claims. So I'm going to ask you one last time. Are you willing to ask the White House to authorize the FBI to investigate the claims that have been made against you?
The FBI would gather witness statements. You have the witness statements.
I don't want to debate with you how they do their business. And say yes or no, and then we can move on.
I've had 6 background investigations over 26 years.
Sir, as it relates to the recent allegations, are you willing to have them do it?
The witness testimony is before you. No witness who was there supports that I was there.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a no, and we can move on. Do you agree that it is possible for men to both be friends with some women and treat other women badly?
And she stood up and said to Christine Blasey Ford, who had far less evidence supporting her story than the woman in the Daily Mail, and said, I believe you. I believe you. She was a believe all women liberal back then, just a few short years ago. Now, not a peep from her team, and not a reporter willing to ask her about those statements and how she so readily rushed to Judge Brett Kavanaugh, but won't even speak to the allegation that her own husband is a woman abuser.
She won't go anywhere near this. She is, sort of curating her interviews and who she's going to sit across from. I wondered, watching the Brett Baier interview, I just thought, was this further down on his list? Because he went for the Biden question, I thought perhaps, and then I wonder if not, how many women he might have on his team. Because if I were on his team, I would be in that room advocating like it's the number one question. It's the number one question, not just because it needs to be asked, but it's going to put her back on her heels. It's going to destabilize her. We're off our talking points. We're off opportunity economy and whatever. Answer this question, especially to the women of America, who you are, this whole thing too, when she's like, I'm a prosecutor, my teenage best friend was abused. You can't have it both ways.
You're doing her a favor. You could easily say, I think in general at Fox, they would feel like, oh, well, it's a tabloid story. It's hasn't been confirmed by one of our own. They would treat it like that. So we can't ask about it. And I think Brett probably had just a short time with her and it just wasn't high on the list of priorities. But if I had her, I would easily ask it and I would do her the favor of saying, the Daily Mail's got a very serious series of reports now about your husband. The first alleges that he cheated on the first wife with a nanny, which he has now confirmed. The second alleges that he hit his ex-girlfriend, the one he was dating a year before you, so hard she spun around and then fled from him in Cannes, France in 2012. Do you deny it? And what have you done to look into it? That's journalism. It's not that hard. It's not Megyn Kelly making stuff up about you. It's in one of the most widely circulated papers in the world. Millions of people have read it. Ask her about it.
Ask her about it. And by the way, if this were a truly defamatory, made-up story that was like a political hit job, she'd be out front and center saying as much.
Yes, that's exactly. And they'd put out the ex-girlfriend. They'd put her out.
They would.
She'd be out there saying, let me talk to Maureen Callahan. I'm going to have to talk to Maureen now. I'm going to have to tell her this is a lie by your paper. Sorry, you got it so wrong. That hasn't happened.
Right. And there's no way Kamala Harris would ever come near you.
Yeah.
Because she knows.
And you know what? She should, because we have a lot of audience.
She really should.
We got a lot of voters who listen to this show who are in the key swing states and honestly, are right in the sweet spot of the people she probably thinks she can get. We don't have all Trumpers and we don't have all, leftists. I think we have mostly center right, some center left, center and right listening to this show. That's exactly who she's trying to target if she's going on Fox and potentially sitting with Joe Rogan. Here we are, Madam Vice President. I'm here for you.
She should do it, but for many reasons. But chief among them, too, is you do a very conversational show. You and I often wind up talking about things that aren't even on an agenda.
Right.
I don't think she can do it. I don't think she can sit and have a conversation about ideas and parry back and forth and want to hear things that might run counter to her belief system. Mm-hmm. I just don't think she's capable of any of it.
That's the thing, too. I mean, I am open about the fact that I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris, and I don't think much of her. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, if she came into this studio, or if I went to her and I sat across from her, I would treat her with total respect. I would not show those personal feelings in the exchange.
Right.
That's just being honest about how I actually feel, which is what I do in my new lane. I talk about my opinions on these politicians and their policies. But in the context of an interview, I would be my normal self. And honestly, if I were across from Trump right now, who I want to win, I would have to hammer him on the controversies that are around him. In this rate, I would do my job. I'm both a journalist and more of a pundit now in some ways too. And if they conflict, the journalist wins.
Right.
I just wish that were true for everyone. Okay. I want to move on to this story that's all over the news right now because it continues a theme that you and I have discussed many times, and that is the death of Liam Payne of One Direction. How many times have we talked about the downsides of young, fame, fortune, too soon, before these kids really can handle it, and all that comes with it? It's even the success stories are fraught. So this poor guy who was part of this British boy band, one of the most successful of all time, 70 million records sold. I actually didn't know a ton of their songs, to be perfectly honest with you, until I went and search the music essentials. And the one I know the best is that everyone knows that
I don't
one.
really know that. I'm a Harry Styles person.
He was in the band.
Right.
Harry Styles was in the band. Yes, you know that song. Come on, this is Sirius XM. We've got to be able to lay in some. You don't know you're beautiful.
Okay.
We're going to lay in some of the music because I work for a music company now, so we're going to have that song.
In the way that you are is enough. Everyone else in the room can see it. Everyone else but you. Baby, you light up my world like nobody else. The way that you flip your hair gets me overwhelmed. But
Anyway, so huge success. They were put together on X Factor. And he goes over to Argentina and dies after, the police said, jumping from a third-story balcony in the hotel. The prosecutor in charge is saying may have fallen, unclear. Drug paraphernalia reportedly found, alcohol as well. They're not expecting a clean tox screen. Behaving erratically beforehand. There was a report of a smashed television. They first called the cops saying someone's out of control and we're not sure if he's going to hurt himself. It was too late by the time they got there.
Yeah.
So what do you make of his story, Maureen? Because as I read into it, he spoke openly of battling suicidal thoughts prior to this, about the massive downsides of fame.
Yeah.
How unhappy it was making him.
Yeah. He reportedly said shortly before he died, like half an hour earlier in the lobby, some fan had approached him. He said something like, I was a child star. I was in a boy band, and that's why I'm so effed up. The other thing I noticed about him is the sleeves of tattoos that he had. And one of the markers, and I'm not saying this was the case with him or with anybody necessarily who has multiple tattoos covering their bodies, but it is often an indicator that that is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Those tattoos are a way of reclaiming the skin, of erasing what was done to them. And so whenever I see that, I often think, what did they maybe survive?
Wow.
The Liam thing made me think of Justin Bieber, who is also clearly struggling right now and hopefully has an incredible support system around him, because whatever's going on is he's a new father. This should be the happiest time of his life, not a time in which he is greatly struggling. And then all of this also reminded me of, so the Lisa Marie Presley memoir is out right now. And one of the stories that her daughter Riley, who finished the book for her, chose to include is completely jaw-dropping, and I don't understand why it's so underreported. She writes that after her brother, Lisa Marie's son, Benjamin, committed suicide, gunshot wound to the head at a very young age, I think he was maybe 28. She had him embalmed, and then she had him moved back into her house where she lived with him for 2 months.
Lisa Marie did. Or she lived with her son's dead body.
For 2 months. Oh my God. My theory about this, she married Michael Jackson. She married a pedophile. Who was obsessed with little boys.
Oh.
He was also obsessed with Elvis Presley.
Right.
And her son looked a lot like Elvis. And I wonder if he got his hands on that little boy, and that was the cause of his trauma, his drug and alcohol issues, the ultimate suicide, and if her grief was so complicated by feeling blame, maybe, for what had happened to him. And that could be why. It's just a theory, but I think it makes a lot of sense.
Who lives with their dead child's corpse for 2 months? She kept him on dry ice?
Apparently. In like a casita, in like a guest house. And she would say that she would go in there and she would talk to him and like comfort him. And then what finally happened apparently was she called a tattoo artist to come to the house and give her and her son matching tattoos.
Oh my.
And then the tattoo artist says, sure. And she comes over and Lisa Marie is like, here's my son. And it's like right out of Psycho, you know?
Oh my God. I mean, truly, that's a disturbed person.
Yeah.
Lisa Marie. I mean, we know this, but
Yeah.
I mean, even more than we knew.
Yeah.
It would take something dramatic to drive you to that point. I mean, loss of a child is the worst thing that can possibly happen to anybody. And she's had a lot of loss. She did prior to dying at a very young age with Elvis and, just a tumultuous world around her. So who knows? It's obviously just a theory.
Just a theory.
And the truth is we don't know for sure about Michael Jackson either, but you're putting some pieces together that make some sense. It's dark, Maureen. I don't know. To me, it's just further affirmation of all of this. Michael Jackson's life, Lisa Marie Presley's and her family's lives, Liam Payne, Matthew Perry, like enormous fame at a very young age is a devil. It's not a blessing. It's a curse. and it should be avoided and eschewed and protected against at all costs.
Absolutely. I think it's the worst thing that could happen to a child. I really do. And it's so funny. I was with my niece on Sunday. She's 11. And we were talking about a lot of these stories, the whole family, and talking about childhood fame and what wreckage it causes, the carnage it causes. And my brother said, that's why I won't let her model. I won't do it. My sister-in-law said, well, what if she winds up on her traveling basketball team? My brother's like, show's on the road. We're not leaving her alone with anybody who is not related to her. And I don't think most parents think that way. And more really should.
Yeah, not until they get old enough to understand, what the risks are. Like 15, you can talk to a 15-year-old.
Right.
These are the risks of life. It's not that they can't be exploited, though. In connection with that whole Nickelodeon expose, we heard some disturbing stories about young men around that age, too. It's just there are predators out there. I do want to play this one soundbite we pulled. He went on a podcast called Straight Talking. Liam Payne did Straight Talking with Aunt Middleton in 2019 and spoke a little bit about his feelings, what he was going through at that time.
For some certain circumstances, I'm quite lucky to be here still, which is something I've never really shared with anyone. Explain. I can't go too deep into it because I don't really know how I feel about it myself. I still haven't really made my peace with it, if I'm honest. There's times where that level of loneliness and people getting into you every day, like I say, just every so often you're like, when will they send? And then that's almost nearly killed me a couple of times.
As
when
in
I've been in
you
a bad
wanted
place. Yeah, when I've been in a bad place, 100%, there's no point denying it. It's definitely been on the menu a couple of times in my life.
It's so tragic. And you just think there are so many families out there who feed their kids to the wolves in this department. Like they want the kid to be famous. They want the kid to be rich so that the parents can feed off of it. Or the parents themselves feel underachieved and they want to have a second go at it through the child. And I think that's in part how this can happen. Somebody's looking to work something out through their kid, or even if you just have an ambitious kid who wants it in these lanes, It's not like, I don't know. I'm not sure if somebody has an amazing talent. If your kid has this amazing talent, let's say you're the mother of Whitney Houston, you're Sissy Houston.
Right.
Do you say to Whitney Houston, you can't sing? You can't do anything with that voice? That would be a tragedy too.
100%.
But I think I would just be such a helicopter in those circles. I would never leave my child alone. I don't know. Then if it happens at age 22, you can't do that anymore. If he wins X Factor and he gets this record deal and it's his dream, am I being too naive? Like, what do you do? And maybe it all has to happen before that. Maybe it's all about laying your family values in there well before they win X Factor.
With Harry Styles, it's interesting because he became the breakout star. There was a sitcom that was based on his life. I forget the name of it. But when he was like at peak boy band fame, he went and lived with like his agent and his wife and their kids. And he like lived in the attic. And they basically were like, well, you have a curfew and all of this. And he really loved it. Like he craved all that structure and that real family life. He found it very grounding. And when I look at a clip of Liam like that, I also think how isolating it must be because everybody is looking at him like he has everything you could want. He has looks, he has fame, he has money, he has talent. And inside he feels empty. And how many people are really going to understand that? It almost compounds the pain in a way.
That's right. Because people look at you like you can't have any problems. What are you talking about? There was something, my team gave me this in preparation that, he said in 2021, he blamed a pills and booze phase for bloating his face to 10 times its size, while also revealing he used to guzzle the contents of his mini bar when the band would check into hotels. It's wild, but it was like the only way you could get frustration out during the day, he said. Just talking about the level of loneliness that he would go through. He had multiple problems with women, even though a great-looking guy, very successful, but tumultuous relationships with people. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of answering my own question, but I feel like Dr. Leonard Sachs, who's a parenting expert and not just one of these woo-woo guys. He's like actually only deals in longitudinal long-term studies that give us real data on what works with kids and what doesn't. He always says, more time with the family, more time with the family, more time with the family, more dinners together around the dinner table at night with the family. Don't obsess about friend time. There will be plenty of that when they are older and more mature. When they go off to college, you're not going to be around. Your time from 0 to 18, when they are still in your house, is your time to make your moral, ethical, and loving imprint and build the character that he or she is going to need to go out into whatever profession they choose. And anything before that, you are playing with fire.
And there is nothing like a child knowing that their parents don't just love them, but they like them and they want their company and they enjoy spending time with them. There's nothing like it. And I feel Liam, I don't know much about his early life, but I can guarantee he probably had stage parents. And the way that you get the love of a stage parent is you earn it by performing and getting rich and famous. And that is a very lonely place to be.
God rest him, 31 years old. That's way too young to be gone. And let's hope we don't see a pattern of this, because, you know, too often in the wake of, especially when someone dies by suicide, which this may or may not have been, you see a pattern.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like, it's a wonderful time of year. We're stressed out slightly by this election. This is dark news we're discussing. I mean, both of our last two stories, this Doug Emhoff allegedly definitely cheating on the nanny and then slapping the woman, and now this is terrible. But the truth is, if you zoom out, it's October. It's truly the most beautiful time of year. We have one of the biggest blessings one can have, which is we're American and we were born in this country, and we're going to walk outside and the leaves are going to be blowing and they're still on the trees and they're starting to change color, and we're free and we can say what we want for the most part still here in America. And we are always working on ourselves. I think that is a good thing about Americans, that we're always working on ourselves as Americans and as individuals. You know, it comes from a good place of just having that American dream. I can improve my life. I can improve my fortune. So those are things to feel good about right now through November 5th.
I do. I have a lot of hopes and goals and ambitions about applying my work ethic to continue to engage in the opportunity economy. But I'd like to get off my talking points, Megyn. So thanks for having me conversationally.
I very much hope you can be unburdened by what has been. Maureen.
Thank you. I try.
It's a pleasure, as always.
As always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She's the greatest. Okay, coming up, we actually have a very interesting guest. This is the guy who could get an Ohio Senate seat, a U.S. Senate seat from the state of Ohio, out of Democrat control. His name is Bernie Moreno, and he's here next. The Genucel Dark Spot Corrector is back on sale with their amazing fall promotion. You can save up to 70% off, but it's for a limited time, so get it now before it's too late. And don't just take my word for it. Stephanie from Santa Cruz, California says, I have skin damage from years in the sun. Love this product. It's great, even at my age, end quote. Sunspots, brown spots, discoloration, even red inflamed patches all disappear in front of your very eyes. And then Genucel Guarantee is simple. You will see results on the very first day, guaranteed, or your money back. So take advantage of the Genucel Complete Skincare Package at about 70% off, completely risk-free. Go to Genucel.com/MK today. Start looking years, even decades younger tomorrow. Plus, as a special gift, all orders of the Complete Skincare Package come with a limited edition beauty box with 2 skincare essentials free. That's GENUCEL.com/MK, Genucel.com/MK. Health has been a big topic around the country over the past few weeks. And one thing we don't talk about enough is how exercise plays a vital role in that. And it's not just cardio. We really need to look at strength training. More muscle helps to boost metabolism and helps as we age. But let's face it, many are intimidated when it comes to lifting weights at a gym, not to mention the fact that we are all busy and we don't necessarily have the time. This is where Jacked Up Fitness comes in. They bring the gym to you, a full machine that fits in your house and does it all. It's an all-in-one home gym. It allows you to do multiple strength training exercises. And best of all, it comes with access to their app, which includes multiple workouts where you just push play and follow along. Jacked Up Fitness is an American company, and they are giving 900 machines this year to the Wounded Warrior Project. So if you're looking to take charge of your health and help veterans on their road to recovery, order your home gym today at getjackedup.com and enter code MK for a 10% discount on your own home gym. Well, perhaps no contest outside of Trump v. Harris is more important to the overall national picture than the battle for Ohio's U.S. Senate seat. The result could very well tip the balance of power. Hundreds of millions of dollars have poured into both campaigns, and the polls show it may be the only true toss-up there is. My next guest is Bernie Moreno. He is looking to unseat career politician and Democrat Sherrod Brown. Bernie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Megyn. I look forward to the conversation. Big fan. Right, my wife's an even bigger fan.
Oh, she sounds like a good person. Tell her I said hello. All right, so walk me through how you're going to do this, because I told the audience when I was teasing the fact that you were coming on, this is what I see in the polls. September 18th, Sherrod Brown up 4. These are random polls, New York Times, Marist, Washington Post, and so on. So that's September 18th. September 21, Brown was up 4. October 3rd, Brown was up 2. October 3rd, Brown is up 1. It seems to be going in the right direction for you. He's been up at all these polls, but it's getting tighter and tighter. And I see it's getting tighter right at the right time for you. But how do you get it to Moreno up 2?
Well, so we have a couple polls that have us up 1 or 3. The reality is he was up 11 back in March when the primary was over. We had one of the most expensive Senate primaries in the country, brutal primary. I was up against 2 formidable opponents. You got to remember, Sherrod Brown's been around for 50 years, 30 years in Washington, D.C. This guy's set all kinds of fundraising records. He's well known throughout the state. When I launched my campaign, my name ID was 4% with a 4% margin of error. So literally nobody in Ohio knew who I was. So we've worked really hard. We've gone to every corner of the state. We're now advertising at the right time. We're pointing out his extraordinarily liberal voting record. And that, combined with hard work and parity on spending, we're going to make certain that we beat him, and we'll beat him by a decent number, because none of those polls, Megyn, have him up over 46 or 47%.
What are Ohioans doing voting for a Democrat like Sherrod Brown? Truly, Ohio's red now. It's no longer a swing state. It's like Florida. So how did that happen?
Well, the same way Kamala Harris has convinced a little less than half the country to vote for her. They just lie about who they are. Sherrod Brown goes to Washington, D.C., votes with the far radical left. He's out there with Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris when she was there, Bernie Sanders. But when he gets to Ohio, he becomes a Trump-loving moderate Democrat. And the media in Ohio covers for him. His wife works for the Ohio media. So if you watch his TV commercials, Megyn, you think this guy's kind of a Republican. So he just lies. It's good old-fashioned fraud. But we're exposing it by highlighting his voting record, showing how extreme he is. And that's how we're going to win this race.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, you have a very interesting family background, right? You were not born in this country.
I was not. I was born in Colombia, South America. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My dad was one of 11. My grandfather was one of 23, so we're overperforming Catholics. But we got to this country when I was a kid, became a citizen the first opportunity I could, which is why I'm disgusted by this illegal immigration situation, like all immigrants that have come to this country legally.
How do you, is it true your dad was a surgeon in Colombia, and then in an effort to give you a better life and a different way of upbringing, you guys moved here, and he then was a surgical assistant, given the difference? I mean, he humbled himself, it sounds, to get you guys here.
Yeah, I mean, he went from being actually the Secretary of Health. He had been the dean of the medical school. He had a great life, came from a very prominent family. My mom and dad moved here, 9 of us, into a 2-bedroom apartment with a den, 2 bathrooms. My dad was making $5.25 an hour. I watched him do rounds in the middle of the night. But he did it because my mom and dad knew that this was the place on earth where the 7 of us could live whatever American dream we wanted to make for ourselves. And we have. And Megyn, that's why I'm running for office. I want this country to be better for my kids and my grandkids and your kids and your grandkids. And right now, because of these career politicians, we're about to head off a cliff.
Right. So you're not a career politician. You started with one car dealership, as I understand it, Mercedes-Benz. And you, I guess, unlike yours truly, have had a lifetime interest in cars, because I understand at a very young age, you wrote a letter to General Motors on how they could improve their cars or the automobile industry.
I was 14 years old, and because you have young kids, every 14-year-old, they know everything. So I wrote Roger Smith, who was the chairman of the board of General Motors at the time, a letter telling him how to fix GM. He actually responded with a 3-page letter. I ended up going to work for General Motors, did that. That's where my wife and I met, was in college. We both worked for General Motors. I thought I'd be there forever. I met a guy in Boston who was a car dealer, had started buying car dealerships in his 50s. He asked me to run one of his dealerships. I'd never even worked in a car dealership in my life. Gave me that opportunity. Made it a successful store. He grew from 6 dealerships to 55. I learned a lot. Gentleman's name is Herb Chambers. He taught me everything I know about sales. He taught me everything I know about the auto industry. And then Roger Penske called me 20 years ago and said, hey, he's got this little dealership in Cleveland. He wanted me to buy it. Little technicality, Megyn, I didn't have the money to buy it. So I sold every possession I had in my life, took out the biggest loan I possibly could, maxed out my credit cards, bought this little dealership, and turned it into one of the largest dealer groups, 15 dealerships in the country.
Wow. All right. So then why politics? Sounds like you had a great life.
Well, after I sold my car dealerships, I started a technology company using blockchain to make car titles digital. We sold software to state governments. And the reason I'm running for office is very simple, Megyn. If the business people of this country don't step up to serve, and we continue to allow these career politicians who have no idea how anything works to go there and run our government, what are we going to get? $36 trillion in debt, endless wars, open borders, a mess in our communities, a mess in our schools. So we have to step up and serve. Look, my wife, like I said earlier, I have the greatest wife on earth. I married her 35 years ago. I truly hit the lottery. She is with me 100% in this campaign. She's been with me in every step of the way. She's going to be with me for 2 terms, though, Megyn. Any talk of a 3rd term is with a second wife. So this is going to be 2 terms. I'm going to go to D.C. and serve and then come home.
That's nice to hear, truly, because what we get is these career politicians who then are more connected to the system than they are to their constituents back home. And we've seen that failed many, many times. Let me ask you about some of the things that are in the news. There's a comment that you made that was caught on camera that they're giving you some jazz for, including our friend Rachel Maddow. She's very upset with you. Here is what you said. It was about abortion. I'm sure you've heard this many times now. It's SOT 30.
There's a lot of suburban women. A lot of suburban women that are like, listen, abortion's it. If I can't have an abortion in this country whenever I want, I will vote for anybody else. Okay, a little crazy, by the way, but especially for women that are like past 50, I'm thinking to myself, it's an issue for you. Oh, thank God my wife didn't hear that one. Oh, they get trouble.
Okay, so up until the 50-year-old part, what you said is true. Right? And then it sounded to me like it was a joke. I think I'm going to assume you are aware that women past 50 might care about abortion, but why did this blow up so badly? Like, was it your opponent?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Megyn, the left and the media have an outrage machine, which is geared up to really go. When you wake up every day in this country yearning to be offended, you're probably going to be offended. Look, it was obviously a quip. Certainly, there's all of us that make comments periodically that we don't probably think were said the right way. The point, though, I was trying to make is crystal clear. It is crazy that the media and the Democrats think that women are single-issue voters. Look, my wife's number one issue is she wants peace and stability around the world. She doesn't want my 2 boys going to fight a war. She doesn't want my grandkids to have to fight some endless war. So she cares a lot about that. There's people who care a lot about the price of groceries, the price of food, the price of insurance, an open border, our schools that are failing. So this idea that abortion is the only issue that women care about is insulting to women. And by the way, men playing in women's sports is an abomination. I have 2 daughters also, 2 granddaughters. That's just crazy. And children, no, that's not going to be allowed in this country. And those are things that women and men both care about.
Mm-hmm. I'll show you the Maddow comments so you can see what's being done with the comments.
Oh, thank God my wife didn't hear that one.
A little crazy, by the way, but especially for women that are like past 50. I'm thinking to myself, I don't think that's an issue for you. He actually says it. I'm thinking to myself, I don't think that's an issue for you. Wow. You know, unluckily for Bernie Moreno in Ohio, running against Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, women in Ohio, even women over 50, apparently do still have the right to vote, even if he doesn't think they have a right to an opinion. Good luck, sir. Amazing.
Oh, Lord. It wasn't just Rachel Maddow. I do want to tell the audience, Nikki Haley felt the need to weigh in, saying, are you trying to lose this election? Asking for a friend. Hashtag tone deaf. Hashtag Don Lemon vibes. What do you make of that?
No. Well, what are you going to do? Listen, like I said, if you wake up every day in America waiting to be insulted or outraged, it's a pretty sad life. Look, I hope people understand that sometimes quips are made, sometimes they land, sometimes they don't. But Megyn, look, the point is right, which is we've got to get the country together on this very divisive topic of abortion. It is a terrible situation for a woman to find themselves in. So the question becomes, what can we do? Now, I'm pro-life, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But what I can do as a senator is make certain that adoption is less expensive, raising a child is less expensive, having a child is less expensive, making sure that women have access to good health care, making certain that women have equal access to contraception. We can fund pregnancy centers. That's my recipe.
Yes.
That's my prescription for policy. My opponent, by the way, Megyn, partial birth abortions are okay. Federal funding for abortion is okay. He voted against the Infant Born Alive Protection Act, which is a botched late-term abortion. The baby can't be given life-saving care. He's the extremist. I'm not. But again, the outrage machine is geared up and ready to go at a call of notice for the Democrats.
Now, because the country is turning more Republican right now than Democrat. If you look at the overall polls, for the first time, I think, in Gallup in decades, we're more Republican than we are Dem. You're seeing people like your opponent try to, if not cozy up to Trump, cozy up to his policies. They're running from their previous stances on things like the trans issue with boys playing against girls in sports. And your opponent wants us to believe that he's not in favor of that, even though virtually every Democrat in the country has voted in favor of that. Where do you stand and where does he stand on that issue?
Well, my position is crystal clear. You're born a man or you're born a woman. You're not going to have men playing in women's sports because that's insane. I was with Riley Gaines. She went through detail. I don't have to explain it to you. You've heard Riley many times. That story's awful. Then you look at children. That shouldn't even be a conversation. Leave our kids alone. That's where I believe. My opponent voted against a bill that Tommy Tuberville put forward that said we were not going to provide federal funding for schools that allowed men to play in women's sports. He voted against that. That means he's in favor of it. He also said that it's up to the parents and the doctors as to whether children should get puberty blockers or quote unquote gender affirming care, which is code for life. They can't consent. It should never be allowed. And my opponent feels that way. That's how liberal he is, Megyn. That doesn't represent the values of Ohio. It barely represents the values of Massachusetts and California, but we already have 4 terrible senators between those 2 states. We don't need a 5th one. That's why we need somebody who actually represents Ohio values. That's what I'm going to be in the United States Senate.
As it has in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and in Texas, this trans issue with boys trying to play in girls' sports has reared its head and has become a major theme line in all of these big races. I know you attacked him on this issue via an ad, and here is his response.
Biological men? What if I told you all of this was a lie, a complete lie, and Bernie Moreno knows it? The truth is, in Ohio, this has already been banned. And Sherrod Brown agrees with Governor DeWine. These decisions should be made by local sports leagues, not politicians.
We can verify the claim that Brown voted to let transgender biological men participate in women's sports is false.
I'm Sherrod Brown and I approve this message.
How do you respond to that?
Well, let's start with fact 3. That reporter, journalist is a hack that basically works for the Democrat Party on a local TV station. So, of course, she's going to do their bidding. The other fact 2, which is that he agrees with Governor DeWine that it should be up to sports leagues. No, it should not be up to sports leagues. Men can't play in women's sports, period. You protect Title IX. In terms of fact one, which is that it's illegal in Ohio, that is true, and he was opposed to it being illegal in Ohio. In fact, now what's happened is GLAAD, the uber left progressive group, is now attacking him for not standing up for their community. So he's a total fraud.
So can you talk to me a bit about ground game? Because I think many Republicans are very worried about this. It just seems like the Democrats have this blue chip operation ever since Obama, and the Republicans have been playing catch up. How have you prepared to win in the state of Ohio?
That's a great question. Remember the business I was in, which is the retail automotive business. So we brought those practices to bear. So we knew we were going to be outgunned on TV in the summer. So Megyn, what we did is we built the largest door knocking operation in Ohio history with the help of Libre, Americans for Prosperity, Sentinel Fund, and Susan B. Anthony. We're knocking on 150,000 doors a week in every corner of the state. We got an incredible digital program, text messaging, and also direct mail. So we went out and targeted, hyper-targeted voters who are maybe apathetic, don't always vote, but are conservative, people who we know support President Trump, but only vote for him and don't vote down ticket. And then, of course, the third one, the person that would vote for President Trump and then possibly vote for Sherrod Brown. So we hyper-targeted that. That's how we went from down 11 to down 5 without any money on TV. And we hope to keep this ground game in place and move it for future elections. And we've got a great absentee voting and early voting initiative. So we're actually tied right now with the Democrats in early voting. And we think that's going to make a huge difference in this election.
Do you think Republicans are listening? Because Trump just started saying vote and vote early. He ironically was late to the vote early party. And I know this is very frustrating for people who are canvassing for him and probably people like you too. But you really are seeing the voters do it?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I'll give you a stat that'll blow your mind. The 5 largest Republican counties are all ahead in early voting versus in 2020. And the 5 largest Democrat counties are all down in early voting. If that trend continues, and right now our internals have us tied, Sherrod and I, in terms of early voting, we'll crush them on election day. Look, what we tell people, Megyn, is very simple. Vote 11 times. And what that means is vote yourself and then bring 10 people, physically bring 10 people to early voting stations between now and election day. So we're going to close that gap because once they vote, we don't have to knock on their door. We don't have to call them. We don't have to text them, and we don't have to email them. It saves us a fortune. So we're actually giving objectives to counties. We're talking to county chairmen about what they can do. And I go to every corner of the state with this exact message, and it's actually really working.
Your seat really could determine the balance of power in the Senate because the Republicans are going to win West Virginia. So that's one pickup. That gets them to 50-50. But to get, true control, they need one more. And so far, they've been looking at Montana as their best chance to get control. And that still seems likely, though not guaranteed. However, they're becoming a little wobbly in Nebraska and even in Texas. And so that makes your race, I'm just talking numbers here with all due respect to you, but that makes your race even more important because they'd love to have the cushion just in case one of these other races goes soft. How is all of this discussed and accounted for behind the scenes when you talk to, the National Senatorial Committee?
Well, I make it very crystal clear to everybody that Tim Sheehy's a great candidate, a great guy, but he's number 52. His polls don't close till 10 o'clock Eastern. My polls close at 7:30. And if we do the job right and we get early voting, I can have this race called by 8 p.m. Eastern time, Megyn, so that the whole world can go, whew, we got the Senate. That's what I hope happens. So I'm 51, Sheehy's 52, and maybe Hovde and some others are 53 and 54. We're going to win big, and we have to. We have to win big because we have to send a message to the world that America is not going to go down the drain. We're not going to destroy our constitutional republic, that we're going to embrace American ideals. This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is common sense versus lunacy. And so it's important that we have a huge resounding victory.
Well, the other thing is she really could win this presidential race.
Yeah.
I mean, it really could go either way. And there are multiple reports that the Democrats could win the House. You know, if you were putting odds on it, you would put odds on the Republicans to take the Senate, and the House is more of a toss-up this go-round. And so people like you, I mean, it's just a handful of people who could be the difference between Kamala Harris getting potentially to enact her entire agenda, whatever it turns out to be. We'll find out, I guess, once she's elected, if she is, and not. I mean, if you get to the Senate, what do you plan to do if we have a Democrat-controlled House and a Democrat in the White House?
As Nancy Reagan would say, just say no, right? Say no to lunatics in the cabinet, lunatic in administrative offices, lunatics in the judiciary, lunatic ambassadors. Look, it would be a battle. Let's not do that. Let's make certain that we elect Donald J. Trump and my close friend and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Look, there's no comparison in this election. You got people who are objectively just not even qualified to do any job versus two people who will rebuild American greatness. So we're going to get President Trump in there. We're going to keep the House. We're going to win the Senate. And we're going to restore America because the world needs that, Megyn. The world's watching this election. China's telling leaders all over the world that America's in decline, that we're arguing about men are men or women are women. They're laughing at us, Megyn, and we need to show them that America is back and America is going to be strong.
Bernie, you mentioned J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance said some terrible things about Trump back in 2016 and beyond because he didn't much like him at first. And then he's since said, I came around on him. You know, I was wrong. I got to know him better and so on. You're kind of in that boat. You reported, according to NBC, you called Trump a lunatic and a maniac in 2016, compared him to Hitler allegedly on social media. So for the audience out there that might be closer to where you were in 2016, right, when it comes to Trump, what's your messaging? Like what changed your mind and why do you feel comfortable with him now?
Well, first of all, I bought into the media narratives that he was a bad person. That's number one. And what I've learned by getting to know him personally, Megyn, he's a very good person. He's a good dad. He's got great kids. He's genuinely a warm human being. That's the story that's not really told. You know, if you got to know President Trump, you would know he's a good man. So back in 2015, almost a decade ago, I didn't know him, got to know him, completely changed my mind. Secondly, for the people who won't get to know him on a personal level, look at what the man did when he was the President of the United States. We had low inflation, secure border, peace around the world. We had energy independence for the first time in 75 years. We had real wages going up for Hispanics, for blacks, for women. So look at his track record. And for those people that buy into the CNN and Rachel Maddow narrative of an assault to democracy, he didn't assault democracy. In fact, he honored democracy. He could have gone after his political opponents. Guess what? He didn't. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did. So this is a clear choice between a media-driven narrative around a man that they used to adore, by the way. Look at him last night in the Al Smith dinner. I mean, the guy is just a good human being. He's funny, he's warm, and he loves this country unlike any other person I've ever met. It's what inspires me to fight hard to go into the United States Senate. Because for business people, this isn't the natural thing to do, by the way, Megyn. This is not what we expect to do, to put ourselves out there in the lion's den, but we do.
No, and it's hard. I was recently talking with a U.S. senator who was saying that the job is fulfilling, but not like joyful, that the person didn't feel happy, with this lifestyle or all the stuff that comes with it, but felt fulfilled. I think that's reasonable. There is a noticeable downside to going from the private sector into the public sector. But, I'm thinking about the whole time we're talking, how it's very hard to get people to fire an incumbent. They just know. They're like, oh, Sherrod Brown. Yeah, like he's with Ohio. Yeah, he's done good things. He's risen to powerful posts. That's good for Ohio. I'm just going to vote for him. I know this from being in New York. This is how we looked at all these, lifelong senators who stayed here. But I look at your name and I'm thinking about what you just said. Moreno, on paper, is more no. And I think if Kamala Harris wins the White House and the Dems win back the House, we're going to want more no from the Senate. It's going to be actually really important to everyone who is in the center or right of center to have more no in there. And you should do something with that. You got that free of charge.
Well, by the way, Moreno is brown in Spanish in the ultimate irony. But the other piece of it is the voters of Ohio get to fire Sherrod Brown. That's their job. My job will be so great, Megyn. I get to fire Chuck Schumer. And I've picked out a beautiful basement office for him. It's going to be amazing. No windows, no water. That's what I get to do. By electing me, I get to go there and say to Chuck Schumer, you're fired, go. And we get to elect a great majority leader. And we've got some great candidates running. So look, I'm super optimistic, Megyn. I think the best years of this country are ahead of us. I look at your kids. We met, you may have forgotten, we met a long time ago. And you met my kids. Our country is going to be great for them, Megyn. That's what this election is ultimately about. They get to live in a better country than we did because we fought hard over the next 18 days to ensure that that happens.
Oh, wow. It's right down to the wire. We are going to be watching. We'll watch it very closely. Thank you. Thanks so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Bernie Moreno, everyone. Race of his life. It's a really important one in the great state of Ohio, where Canadian Debbie is from. And she fell in love with a damn Canadian and moved to damn Canada. Our evil top hat. Anywho, thank you all for joining us today and all week. We're back on Monday with what I'm sure will be an overflow of news, as we're now in the last couple of weeks. The EJs join us. See you then.